Good job on finding my second logbook. I realized the hints I gave in my last book were quite obscure. Either way, let me tell you what happened after I left the castle that fateful day. After departing from the camp, I decided to go west. There, I lived off wildlife and gathered resources I thought would be useful. I crafted another backpack and started searching through my items as everything got very disorganized. I noticed this world was more than meets the eye, as there are a lot of hints pointing towards some deeper meaning and lore. This world isn't the only one, as there are multiple dimensions as suggested by the weird books I keep finding. Surprisingly, they're in my language, which means someone must have wrote them, right? After setting that trail of thought aside, I found another slave camp by a small castle. I decided I get to play hero here, and took out the undead monsters that lived in it, and after that I looted the castle and found artifacts and weapons that seemed to belong to sets of armor. I decided I'd try to collect them and see if I could boosts if I wear a full set of a certain armor. After wandering in the redwood forest, I found an odd structure hidden within a hill. I initially didn't think much of it until I looked up on the roof of it, and it was packed with skeletons. Fortunately for me, they didn't seem to have spotted me, so I could think of a way to enter this place without being seen. I climbed up on the roof and took out all the skeletons, which acted as sentries. For some reason though, they didn't call for reinforcements, as they probably thought they were strong enough. But unfortunately for them, they weren't. After absolutely wiping the floor with them, I poked a hole in the roof and saw the necromancer sitting there. Apparently it is an arena where people can participate in being the strongest. Although they were all undead, so I had to kill all of them. After carefully killing some skeletons with some holy water, I dropped down and killed the necromancer too. After which I retreated and healed my wounds before entering the fray again and wiping the arena out. After everything, I released the captive animals and people and grabbed all the loot I could find. After releasing the captives, I wanted to test out my strength against those who were considered the strongest. A handful of people really wanted to fight me, so I hopped down into the arena and found myself face to face with the first challenger. Leroy Senior and Junior. Agile fighters, but stood no chance. Next up were 3 skeletons eager to test their strength, but alas, I was too strong as well. After that, another group of skeletons, the lumberjack, the mounted menace, the drone and the prism, and the god tamer, all of which stood no chance. I wondered if I had become too strong, but when I think back to the general skeleton, I clear the thought and realize that can't be. After my adventure in the arena, I started wandering around again. I decided it was finally time for me to settle down and make my own home. I didn't really know what kind of place I wanted to settle in, so I wandered around more and found a beautiful water spring. Multiple rivers springing into existence by geysers and underwater caves. It created a beautiful calming dance of rivers, creating a natural islands which were easily defendable against enemies. It was perfect. I started my home by finally creating chests where I could sort out all the stuff I had found in my travels. After trying some of the capsules I kept finding, I decided I wanted to build my own home. So I started building. Then finally, after days of building, I had completed my own house. A cozy home made of wood and stone, where I could finally settle down for good. Now that I finally had a place to live, I could start making more progress in becoming stronger. I found a book with all kinds of materials and weapons I could craft with the help of a forge. So I started constructing the forge by gathering gravel, sand and clay, and then converting it to grout and smelting it to get seared bricks. These bricks could withstand the intense heat a forge would produce and was perfect to hold all the metals I planned on using for my newly found hobby. After having constructed the forge, I made myself an Obsidian Pickaxe, which I needed to gather a very special resources: cobalt and ardite. These materials would act as the foundation for all my tools. So I started making patterns and overcasting them with aluminum brass to create casts for the parts I needed. After making a manilian sword, an alloy of ardite and cobalt, I wanted to test out the strength of this blade and see how well it was all made. I wanted to get as much information about the weapons as I could, so I made another weapon, a hammer, said to be stronger against undead monsters. So I took both of my newly created weapons to another castle, the same as where I finished off my last logbook. I entered and used my sword on the first skeleton that dared to face me, but it only took one hit to realize that this weapon was OP. It could take out the gold armor skeletons in one hit. The hammer, on the other hand, wasn't as useful as I had hoped. It didn't do as much damage to undead, but proved to be very useful as a mining tool, as it took out a 3x3 area instead of a 1x1. After clearing the castle and returning home, I decided I was finally strong enough to find out more about this world. In my travels, I had picked up a book that talked about a Twilight Dimension existing within this world, which could, much like the Nether, be accessed via a portal. All I needed, according to the book, was a 2x2 hole filled with water, poppies along the sides of the water, and then throw in a diamond. And then, after doing all that, it worked. I prepared myself for the Twilight Dimension by crafting up another key weapon in my forge, the crossbow. A powerful one-hit wonder that could dish out more damage than anything I have experienced in my time here. It took a long time to reload though, but that was fine as it would practically kill anything on my first shot anyway. If I missed, on the other hand, I could always resort to my cleaver. After making proper preparations, I jumped into the portal, and everything went black for a while. After being asleep for what felt like a second and an eternity at the same time, I opened my eyes to an abandoned village, which could be from the overworld. What gave it away that why I was actually in the Twilight was the giant structure that resembled a castle. I went to check it out, but it rained acid rain and was covered in thorns. I tried to go through it, but to no avail. After exploring more and reading the book thoroughly, I realized that there wasn't much for me to do here anymore. So I returned home, and after jotting down the landscape, I realized that there was still a lot to explore. I was very interested about the castle, so I needed to find a way to enter it. And upon my return home, I noticed that one of the kobolds I killed dropped a book with all kinds of useful information about this world. The book mentioned a way to protect myself from the acid rain that surrounds the castle. It has something to do with a spell and defeating great evils of the Twilight. But the acid seemed to have severely damaged the book, so that's all I could learn. After getting so much information, I decided to make a solid plan of attack before tackling the Twilight again. This will probably be written in my next logbook, as this one is full. But until then, good luck.
I've been in this world for years now, barely able to survive on my own, but this changes everything.